The following program contains descriptions of sexual violence.
This is the house that Julian was brought up in. We used to get pheasants and rabbits and all sorts of things, you know. Yes, it was lovely. Just the job for somebody who was nature crazy.
Can you show us his bedroom? Which one is it?
It would have been over there. What I've got in there are a lot of his things. And I've got all his big collection of records and tapes and things. It was punk. It was wonderful.
You like it?
I do. Yes. I did at the time and I still do.
Does it remind you of him when you play them?
I guess it does, yes. What do you want me to do? Start from the top?
Yes, please. Could you tell me what it is you're reading?
My statement to the court, I think. Julian was my only son, my only child. He was a young man with all his life in front of him. This was a particularly vindictive murder, perpetrated entirely for her personal gain. To think that my son should be killed in this calculated and cruel way torments me. The grief, the pain, and the torment will not go away. The wounds are still open. I miss him so much. I'm devastated. It was a man and a woman, police officers, that turned up. They told me he was dead. Days passed and I couldn't tell you what I did. The police, they told me, well, maybe, you know, he did commit suicide. I wasn't going to have that. I said to them, look, you know, this really cannot be true.
How could you know that?
Gut feeling.
You better stop the things you do. Because you're
The story of Dina is very complicated, very confusing. People just think you're making it up, because if you wrote this as a book, it would sound too far-fetched. In 1994, on the 4th of July, I went to Dina's house in Douglas Close in Yapton. So I went to the house to take a witness statement from Dina about the death of her husband, Julian Webb. A post-mortem was carried out when Julian's body had been brought to the hospital. And it established he had died through taking an overdose of drugs. How they had been administered was what we were trying to establish.
What were your first impressions of her?
Oh, I'd say she was very nice, and she was willing to talk. Her account was that he had committed suicide by taking an overdose. And there was a bottle of spirits and drugs had been found. She said he was depressed, and he'd been depressed for some time.
Did that seem believable to you?
Yeah, I've got to be absolutely honest. We didn't disbelieve it. But she didn't seem to be the grieving widow. Or how old you would expect somebody to be 4 days after the person that they presumably loved the most in the world had died. She said, not very long before she made the phone call to the paramedics, he was still alive and was snoring. Paramedics turned up very quickly, 7 or 8 minutes from the initial call. But when they moved him off of the bed onto the floor, rigor mortis had set in. That would indicate that he had been dead for several hours. I realised there were a number of inconsistencies in Dina's statement. It wasn't an open and shut case of somebody committing suicide. It needed a lot more investigation. But it was quite difficult, to be honest with you, because the only witness to this was Dina.
I was basically Julian's snotty-nosed little cousin that used to, come down and annoy him. He was obviously older. He was into his bodybuilding. He was quite a fit bloke. He used to drive a nice red Triumph Stag, which I was never allowed anywhere near. It was quite a summer's day. My mum had told me to come and meet Dina. I kind of almost felt a little bit sorry for her, kind of it's a girlfriend being grilled kind of thing.
I mean, I just thought she was a fairly ordinary person. She was at the Woolwich Building Society. He was up in the offices of the West Sussex Gazette, which was just down the road a wee bit. And I think they used to meet at lunchtime in the pub across the road.
He was quite a shy person, so I don't think he was one to go chatting up girls. Julian lived at home until, he'd met Dina.
She was divorced. She had her little boy, Darren, from her previous marriage. He was a lovely little child. He might have been about 3 at that time, but I found Dina to be absolutely humourless. And, some of the things she said were so far-fetched, they could not be true.
My auntie, Rosie, she took an instant dislike to Dina. And I wondered whether it's just, I don't know, an overprotective mum kind of just not being keen on her. Within just less than a year, they were engaged.
I said, for God's sake, Julian, give it more time. What's the rush? It was probably the fact that his friends were all married or getting married. And of course, I think she saw him as someone she could manipulate. And I'm sure she was very charming, but, that's all part of the game, isn't it?
They registry office. It wasn't a big wedding. And then they went on a honeymoon to Florida. He loved it. Julian absolutely loved it. He loved his fishing. He was a really good fisherman. And that's when she suggested that why don't they move there?
He didn't tell me he was thinking of emigrating. I expect he didn't, because he probably would have thought I would have said, don't.
Dina suggested running, a fishing charter business, taking tourists out on fishing boats. That's a dream job for Julian.
Did it seem like Julian and Dina were in love?
Whatever love is, to quote Prince Charles. I suppose the answer to that is no. No real affection shown, but perhaps there wouldn't be in front of me, who knows?
At this point for you, no alarm bells?
No, not for me. I just thought, he's married, he's in love. Start of a new life. But then, a few months after the wedding, she was diagnosed with cancer.
And I thought, oh, well, if she hasn't got long to live, we'll be rid of her soon. I laugh, but it's a way of surviving. Within a matter of months after she got cancer, she was saying that her ex-husband, Lee, was about and he was beating her up and he was threatening, and they had to keep on the move to avoid him. I kept trying to contact Julian and I couldn't.
So they, instead of living in their home,
Yes.
had spent time on the run?
Yes. It would have been, several weeks, which is why I was getting worried. I thought her ex-husband was, one of these big bruiser types. And when Julian told me she'd got a panic button that the police had installed, I thought if he turned up and found Julian there, he'd beat him up.
Dina accused Lee Wyatt of several assaults. He had used a police truncheon to indecently assault her. She'd had cigarettes stubbed out on her. They were very serious allegations.
Lee was hugely dangerous. So yeah, there was a lot of concern for Julian's safety, but also for Dina's.
Officers investigating Dina's allegations have been looking for Lee for over a year without any trace of him. And now, with the death of Julian Webb, we needed to find him, and we needed to find him fast.
Dina and I both went to the same school. We worked together at the Halifax Bank in the 80s. She was very clever, a very good cashier. She'd always try and wangle it that we got the same lunch break. So we'd go round the shops and just do, I'd say, girl stuff, really. So we had a laugh together. She genuinely was a nice person. First time I met Lee, I remember him vividly with sort of blonde hair, just like a nice looking guy. You couldn't really not like him. But all of a sudden, I started to get phone calls from Dina. Lee's done this, Lee's done that. And they weren't pleasant things. Lee had raped her. It's awful, it's beyond all comprehension. It was like this guy had turned into a monster.
As part of the investigation into the Julian Webb death, one of the things we wanted to do was to establish where Lee Wyatt was. And he was out as wanted. So if he got stopped in the street, he would be arrested. But he was nowhere to be found. Dina had also received death threats from Lee Wyatt.
Hello?
Is that Dina?
Yeah, is that Lee?
Ah, you remember? Roses are red, violence is black. You need our shafting as a payback.
And when you actually hear these threatening phone calls, it sends a chill down your spine. We had to find him.
Are you conscious of how the story sounds?
I am, because it sounds mental. People will be looking at that, oh, is he telling the truth? Is this what really happened? Oh, look, he coughed there, or his eyes have moved over. Everyone is an armchair detective, and they all think they know. Hey, that's human life. We all do it. So just accept it for what it is, the unbelievable, and its truth. This is what happened. I've never been on a blind date before in my life. There was butterflies. So eventually we got to the theatre. It's about a murder scene, sort of whodunit. Dina, she probably revelled in it. The fact that, oh yeah, this is good, right up my street. We kissed that night. It's hard to say, but all I will say is that there was a stage where it was all genuine. I loved Dina. Yeah.
My 21st birthday party, I went dressed as a bumblebee, and he and Dina made themselves teddy bear outfits. She was an attractive, blonde young lady with a seemingly very bubbly personality. I mean, there was nothing there that raised my suspicions. My cousin was just getting into a serious relationship and he was going to settle down.
So we both dressed up as teddy bears, sort of holding hands, walking into there. Well, 10 minutes into the dance floor and dancing, wow. I wish I'd taken a bit more underarm perspirant or aftershave, because it was a bit hot in there. Real happy memories were buying a house. And she would help me out doing the painting. We were doing things together. She was into soft toys, making soft toys. And everyone always used to remark on it. And I thought, with my sales background, I can retail them. In the beginning, we were quite successful. We went on holidays together. Dina knew that I'd always wanted kids. When my son was born, Darren, that was the happiest point in my life. Yeah. So, for a couple of years, my life was pretty okay. I was doing all right.
Did he seem besotted?
In retrospect, yes. And I think, to be honest, to carry on, to follow the path that he followed, then he had to have been completely besotted.
Anyway, one of these soft toys was a little leprechaun about so big. I was selling them at £25 a time. One of the directors that owned the business premises where we were renting out just came up to me and he said, I want 25,000. We shook hands. Next minute, a letter turns up from the BBC that they want to do a cartoon series of Shaun the Leprechaun, and it was worth 250,000. Wow! Then Dina told me someone in Walt Disney saw what we had to offer and they want to buy Shaun the Leprechaun, and the sum is between 40 and 50 million pounds. There was some, what? Dina would be on the phone talking with Hilary, the solicitor. To be honest, she was the person that was in the office and in charge of the phone. So I just let her carry on that way.
It's interesting that he didn't share that news with you or anyone else.
I get the feeling, or I got the feeling subsequently, that once she started spinning that story, the disappearance was quite quick after that.
Dina sat me down and she said, our lives are in danger. She said that the mafia want the money from Walt Disney. And I said, what mafia? Who is this? Now I'm thinking the mafia from the States, but no, it was the Irish mafia, the Irish IRA, another form of criminal underworld gang. The last thing they want is an Englishman making money out of their own folklore item. And what they're going to do is kill Dina and my son if they don't get the money. And she said, you've got to either leave the country or go somewhere and try and set a life up for us wherever you're going. And I trusted her. Why would I not? I was terrified in what was going to happen, not necessarily to me, but to Darren.
When you left, was that the last time that you saw Darren?
Yeah.
By that point, he is completely controlled by Dina. Nobody had had any contact with him whatsoever. We didn't know where he was. No phone calls, no letters, zero communication. He was just a ghost. Just a ghost.
At that point, I was in Cornwall. So many things had already gone on. My mind was just in circles everywhere. Because she said you can never ring the house phone because it's being tapped. I had a list of about half a dozen phone boxes. She had to give me a day, a date, and a specific time. I'd be sitting in the phone box waiting for her to ring me. Ring, ring, pick it up. And she kept on saying, don't give up on us now. You've got to keep this whole thing going for the lives of Darren and ourselves so we can be together. I mean, she said that more than a dozen times, all the time. I remember that on one occasion she was literally crying. I was crying as well, because of the fact that I haven't seen my son for a long time. And the fact, am I ever going to see him? I just believed everything that she was telling me was the truth. At some stage, she said that there were people watching the house, a protection squad looking after Dina and my son. I was told This guy that was part of the team that was protecting us was called Julian Webb. Dina said to me that I was going to take his name. I was going to become Julian Webb. I would be taking on the whole identity. And he would just be entering back into the protection squad, protecting others. And I'm thinking, I'll go along with it. To get a new ID in the name of Julian Webb.
Little group of Sapparella. This is the horn of plenty and it's very tasty, I gather, sort of put into stews. But in France they also call it the trumpet of death. That was a gap, I must have missed one. If I'm out on the nature reserves and so on, I've always got my photographic gear. There's all sorts of things that I see. You just think, I wish Julian could have seen that. And of course, we both of us had this great love of wildlife.
What else makes you remember him?
I suppose absolutely everything, really. You know, it's one of those things you can come round a corner and see something straight through the heart.
Julian wouldn't have committed suicide ever. He wasn't that person, and certainly even if he was massively, massively depressed, which he wasn't because everything was going right, it doesn't make any sense.
I mean, I know you can never completely know another person, but in the same way that I could never do it, I'm quite sure he could never do it either.
After Julian's death, we went down to Hampshire, where Julian Webb was originally from. We took statements from friends and family. Not one person I spoke to said that they believed he would take his own life through depression. If Julian had committed suicide, he would have left a note or been telling people he was considering committing suicide. He hadn't done that. That's when it started becoming really concerning. This is totally out of character for him. So if it wasn't suicide, could it have been an accidental overdose, or had somebody given him those drugs? One of the neighbours, he said that leading up to Julian's death, Dina and Julian had had several arguments about money, and he'd heard these.
Something happened. I remember he said, I believe marriage is for life no matter how difficult it is. He was not his happy, ebullient, general self.
Did you ever get to find out?
No, I didn't. Because it was within a matter of months he was dead.
It was early hours of the morning. I drove up to Sussex. I want to protect my son and I'm not there. How the hell do I do this? How long is this going to keep on going on for? I want answers because there's something not quite right that's going on here. Is Dina lying to me? Would I see my son? I knocked on the door. It was strange because she was behaving weirdly towards me. What are you doing here? You're going to ruin everything. And I think I said, ruin what? What's going on? But she was not telling me nothing. So I guess that's because there was someone else in the property. I believed that there was a protection officer called Julian who was looking after Darren and Dina. Well, there was no sign of Julian. And then she said, we'll have to see one another tomorrow, or I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Did you know he was upstairs in bed at that point?
No. I had no idea. I didn't know what was happening.
I want to ask you about the last days of Julian's life.
Yes.
It began with him not being very well, is that right?
I'd been down to the New Forest and I'd seen these massive carp in the river at Bewley. And they'd come up with the big pink mouths, open mouths, waiting for you to drop something in them and so on. And I thought he'd like to know about that. And I think I phoned him when I got home. And she said he was unwell and he'd got a tummy upset or something and he was in bed.
I get a phone call. It's Dina. She said, oh, Mandy, Julian's not well. She said, oh, look, I went up and he was really, really boiling hot. So she said, so I gave him paracetamol. But then when I went up again, he was like freezing cold. I'm like, maybe you should phone an ambulance or something. And then she went, oh, must go because, yeah, Dad's coming now. And then that was it. Nothing.
It was his birthday, so I phoned again, and she said he was very ill and he was in bed and he was asleep. She was very chatty then, more chatty than I've ever heard her. And I said, would you go and wake him up and ask him to speak to me, please? And she made all sorts of excuses. I said, look, he's still ill. Phone the doctor. Julian wouldn't want the doctor. I said, yes, he would want the doctor. Phone the doctor. And in the middle of that conversation, she said, she said, he's being very sick. And put the phone down. I think he was trying to get down to the phone to speak to me, because he would have known it was me. I did think of going round there. I knew there was something wrong. At the funeral, I was sort of living in a zombie limbo, because it's almost unreal. I think I'm still in a state of limbo, really.
It was just horrendous. Your cousin is dead.
In my heart, I knew she had done this. I've never met anyone who could tell so many lies.
Is Dina a killer? Is she a, you know, I found it really, really hard. It was kind of very, very, very surreal, very strange, but Rosie was absolutely adamant, absolutely adamant. Unless someone's found with a knife in their hand and standing over the body, you don't think someone would do that. Julian didn't have a bad bone in his body. Why would his wife kill him?
I do remember my partner went over and spoke to Dina's family, saying, we don't want any more contact with you. Her father said to him, just you watch what you're saying, in sort of desperation, sort of bullying sort of terms. It did strike me as odd.
How soon after Julian's death did you set your mind to finding out what happened and getting justice?
Half an hour. Very soon, you know, because I knew she had done this. I've always been someone who likes to work through things. I am a bit bizarre, I understand that, but it was the thrill of the chase, and it was another salvation. I mean, she looks innocent, doesn't she? It was a question, really, of finding evidence. I found a letter telling him he'd got a job in America. Dear Julian, I have pleasure in offering you the position as travel representative with Tibbs. Well, she's made it up, hasn't she? You know what they say about scams, poor grammar and bad spelling. This has it all. I mean, I didn't set out to do a detective's job. I didn't know whether the police knew it or not, but I was making sure that they did know it.
During the investigation, we were able to confirm Dina went to her next door neighbours to use a word processor to write the letter. The neighbours said that, well, actually Dina wrote it and here's the copy that I took of it.
I just kept finding these things. She spins these wild yarns. I mean, she did claim she had cancer, and that was not true. She was seeking for sort of sympathy. It was all part of her plot.
Everybody starts telling us stories about Dina's health, about how she had breast cancer, womb cancer, liver failure, how she was going to have one foot amputated because of her diabetes. And when you actually meet her, there's absolutely nothing wrong with her.
So much stuff came out about what she'd done. The morning after Julian died, Dina was on the steps at Julian's work at 8:30 a.m. saying that she wants to know about the death in will service. You know, she turned up a matter of hours after Julian had died to ask where her money was. That's incredible.
Dina was obviously a liar. The extent of her lies was so extreme, I think she started to believe them herself. She had created a world of fabricated stories. The amount of different versions that she had given to people about Julian's death was staggering. saying that he had seasickness, sunstroke, he'd been depressed, and he'd taken to drinking alcohol. Well, most of those we could show weren't true. The post-mortem established he had no alcohol in his blood or in his urine. There would have been some traces of alcohol, there was none. It rang alarm bells. You have to put all this together to try and establish whether she had murdered Julian. This is definitely no accident. We made discovery after discovery. The biggest bombshell of them all was that she had never divorced Lee Wyatt. We were all truly shocked.
She was still married to Lee Wyatt. And, of course, Julian didn't know that, and neither did we.
We had suspicions around Dina, but we had to consider whether Lee was involved in the death of Julian Webb, or whether they had done it together. Or was Lee, in fact, another victim? It's very difficult for somebody to disappear completely for that length of time. We had serious concerns that he may well be dead. Despite the circumstantial evidence pointing to Dina having a hand in Julian's death, there was no smoking gun. The Crown Prosecution Service said you don't have enough evidence to charge her with murder. I can't describe the frustration because we felt we were letting Julian down.
It was interesting because I think they thought it was a sort of, you know, just a small case. And loads of people turned up. And obviously the coroner thought there's something up here.
We know that in Julian's body there was aspirin and dithiopine, which the coroner confirmed were found in fatal doses. But the coroner couldn't say how the drugs had got there. There was no evidence that Julian had committed suicide, but also there wasn't sufficient evidence of foul play.
The coroner came back and said, well, there wasn't a completely satisfactory explanation for his death, and therefore he was recording it as an open verdict. That proved that he hadn't committed suicide.
It meant that murder was still an option.
The case wasn't closed?
The case wasn't closed, no.
It is incredibly disappointing, the fact that we weren't able to give justice to the victim and the victim's family. And I felt that because we hadn't got Dina behind bars, something else was going to happen. I come into work in the morning and I'm told by one of the DSs a man is stopped by the police for benefit fraud and is in custody. He had been using the name of Colin Mitchell, which was a false name. So I walked downstairs, looked in, and I immediately recognised him. We have Lee Wyatt in custody.
I always remember my mother said, Lee, you can never tell them the complete truth because no one will believe it. They'll think you're mad. Based on what I now know, I do believe that she tried to kill me on a couple of occasions. I was victim number one, and no one was going to believe Victim number one.
If you have been affected by any of the issues raised in this programme, help is available online at sky.com/viewer support.
A horrifying crime that so frightens everyone involved will leave you reeling.
It was terrifying.
A murder so bloody, so savage.
You're right. That's not real. That's fake. That's made for TV. But this wasn't made for TV.
Shocks and paralyzes a safe haven.
The bodies were found in close proximity to each other.
They had been bludgeoned to death.
She had pretty much been decapitated.
Who died and who did it?
People started calling our office, asking what was going on.
Was it a colleague? An ex-lover? Your own flesh and blood?
It was so hard to process. The lies, the secrets.
The desperate hunt for the killer unravels a tangled web of deceit.
I'm not really trying to hide myself. They have a police video. You can see the face of the driver? Yes, were you there?
Exposing gambling debts.
His very way of life is being threatened.
Rage.
He had his enemies. Definitely.
And infidelity.
It was unbelievable.
All bets are off in a deadly game of secrets and lies.
So many lies.
I would never have expected so many and such huge secrets.
Discover the deadly deceptions, lies, and murder.
I just couldn't believe it.
A secret to die for. Pleasanton, California is the centerpiece of beautiful Alameda County in the San Francisco Bay Area and one of the wealthiest towns in America. It's known for its great lifestyle, fancy restaurants, and exclusive golf clubs.
The town of Pleasanton is a picturesque, old-timey town. When you walk down the main street, it's just like taking a step back 40, 50, 60 years.
And everybody knows everybody.
The schools were excellent. The crime rate was very low. Just a great place to bring up a family if you could afford it.
60-year-old Ernie Shearer Jr. and his 57-year-old wife Charlene are living the all-American dream.
My parents were well off. My dad, he was an accountant. He had a really keen eye for real estate.
Ernie made his fortune through his real estate investments.
My mom was a hard worker.
Charlene was a professor.
She taught accounting.
Ernie and Charlene have two grown children, 29-year-old Ernest Shearer III, who goes by Skip, and 25-year-old Catherine.
Their childhoods were wonderful.
As a family, we traveled every year. We had a really good life. My dad was just super invested in us children, both of us kids. He coached my soccer team, my basketball team, and he was always coaching Skip's teams. As soon as school got out, we spent 3 weeks doing something. We went to Australia for 3 weeks, we went to the Caribbean for 3 weeks, we went to Italy and Greece for 3 weeks.
They were pretty privileged growing up.
I got married straight out of high school. I was 19 years old and moved to Utah. Myself and my husband had 2 kids at the time.
Skip went to BYU,
the Mormon college, and he got a degree in finance.
After college, my brother worked for a company and they needed an economist. And so he was a forecaster for them. We lived in neighboring cities. We would have game nights. We did that until after his son was born.
Soon after, Skip and his wife Robin moved to California, while Catherine lives in Utah with her family and Skip lives in Los Angeles with his. They're still close with their parents.
My dad would fly down and see Skip's son and his wife, Robin, and my mother would fly to Utah and come see me and my family.
The Shearers look like the perfect tight-knit family, but there are long-standing tensions under the surface.
Ernie liked to gamble.
He got together with a bunch of friends and they played poker together.
Years earlier, Ernie's love of poker rubbed off on Skip, who looked up to his father and tried to emulate him.
Skip and Ernie both loved to gamble. They both loved poker. They both loved money. Skip was really good at math, so he took to blackjack pretty darn quickly, and he was good at it, really good.
He was able to use numbers and use his intelligence, not just luck.
He knew how to count the cards.
It seems that gambling is a family legacy that Charlene is very sad to see passed down to her son.
His mother, as a very devout Mormon, was very against it.
In the past, gambling almost destroyed Charlene and Ernie's marriage, and she didn't want the same for her son.
My mother really struggled with my dad's poker playing. She really felt like gambling was wrong, and it often caused friction to exist in her marriage. And she did talk to Skip about that. My mother's opinion on the subject really didn't make a difference.
While Charlene learns to live with the men in her life gambling, she doesn't have to like it. She also doesn't like the side of Ernie that emerges when he gambles.
My dad also drank alcohol while he was playing poker, and a lot of times he would get drunk.
His personality caused some issues.
He had been known to flash around money and kind of rub his winnings into the other players' faces.
There's no doubt that Ernie has a competitive side when he's gambling, but it also comes out at other times.
Ernie sat on the San Ramon Valley Unified School Board.
There is a lot of power associated with the board. He wanted to be the head guy, and everybody had to listen to Ernie.
Ernie would get aggressive if he does not get his way.
There was a board member that my dad really thought was just a sucker, and he once at a board meeting took her a lollipop and said, "Here's a sucker for a sucker," and handed it to her.
He couldn't get along with other school members, and the public started to get tired of all the bickering.
Ernie was ousted from the school board in a very public and humiliating way.
He was really upset.
And he was a thorn in their side since that day.
As Ernie plans to fight another round with the school board, his son Skip has big plans of his own that shock his family.
He dropped a bombshell on Robin. He decided that he was going to leave his 9-to-5 job and said, "I'm going to become a professional gambler."
My brother was an economist. From everything that he was showing her, it looked like it made more sense for him to become a professional player.
Robin was extremely supportive.
For Skip's mother, Charlene, this decision goes down like a lead balloon.
My mother did not want him to make a life as a gambler. She worried that it would lead to financial ruin.
Skip does have someone important in his corner.
My father, he accepted that my brother had his own choice to make.
When talking about his poker career, his father liked it because his father was still playing poker.
He ultimately looked at Skip as being a chip off the old block.
As his dad says, gambling's only bad if you're a loser. Like Ernie, Skip's a winner, and he plans to prove it.
A career in gambling is fun. It's exciting.
Skip was on the road a lot. For a while, Robin and their son came with him, but Robin didn't really enjoy that. So she stayed home and did the normal, I'm the mom thing.
When Skip began his professional career, he did really well. He was a winner.
And the winning pots were very, very large. I mean, some of them were in excess of $1 million if you won the whole thing.
Skip makes an impressive living in his first year on the pro circuit. And like his father, he has a big personality and likes to flaunt his winnings.
My brother was definitely boastful to the point that it was annoying.
In Vegas, he was living the lavish lifestyle, throwing money around.
He was on top of the world.
Skip bet on a lot of different things. I know at one point he won about $70,000 off of a horse race. He did have a stroke of luck.
Skip's on a winning streak, but he isn't doing it completely on his own.
Skip's friend Tanner was his financial backer.
Tanner was a huge part in bankrolling Skip. Tanner would put the money in for Skip to get into the tournament, whether it be $20,000, $40,000.
Tanner, in return, takes a cut of the earnings.
Tanner would get 40% and Skip would get 60%.
Tanner thought Skip was a great investment because he kept investing in him.
He was winning a lot of money, like $100,000 in a tournament.
Skip is doing so well he can afford to upgrade his life.
Skip tells Robin, hey, let's buy a house.
Robin was thrilled for both Skip and Robin. With a small child, this definitely was their dream home.
The house cost $880,000. Skip was able to put down the 20%.
The problem is Skip's gambling profession is not a safe bet for any lender.
Skip could not qualify for a loan.
Part of the problem when you have irregular income is proving that your income is sufficient to support a house payment. Robin was very upset that they had a difficult time finding a loan.
Skip knows how important the new house is to his wife and will do whatever it takes to make it happen. But Skip's mortgage problems are just the tip of the iceberg.
Skip is keeping a lot of secrets.
Robin had no idea what was going on.
Skip was leading a very dangerous double life.
Skip Shearer and his wife Robin have found the home of their dreams.
They found the perfect house. Skip was able to put $176,000 down.
But nobody would loan them their remaining balance.
Luckily for Skip, there is one last bank he can turn to, the bank of Mum and Dad.
My brother asked for $616,000 to purchase the home.
And that didn't go over well with Charlene.
Charlene is uncomfortable loaning Skip such a large amount of money.
My father knew that my brother had been winning pretty well, and he convinced my mother to help to finance the purchase of the home.
He wanted his son and his grandchild to have a house that they loved. The repayment schedule was $38.50 a month.
I thought my parents were crazy.
Ernie isn't worried. For a high-rolling pro like his son Skip, those monthly payments won't be a problem. And besides, Ernie is used to people close to him owing him money.
Ernie was very generous with his money, but he held people accountable. When they didn't make their payment, he would come to collect.
In one particular instance, there was a man that he had entered into an agreement with.
Stephen Schaefer. He was a friend of Ernie's, and he wanted to buy a condo. He asked Ernie to loan him $125,000.
Ernie provided it, with a catch.
If he missed a payment, Ernie threatened to repossess the condo. It's never a good idea to loan money to family or friends, especially in the amounts that Ernie was loaning out.
Flush with his father's cash, Skip, Robin and their 3-year-old son move into their new home.
It was in a gorgeous neighborhood.
It was 2 stories, several bedrooms upstairs with a nice living room, kitchen, family room, and 2-car garage.
Their dream home comes with a big price tag and Skip needs to make serious money to pay for it.
You have to win more than lose if you're going to make ends meet and pay your bills.
Skip was under a huge amount of pressure.
With big new debts, Skip needs cash and fast. so he contacts his sponsor, Tanner Skadden.
Tanner told him that there were a lot of tournaments and that he would front the entry fee money.
A lot of them were about $10,000 to enter.
Skip was spending a considerable amount more time in Vegas than he was at home. Robin assumed that Skip was doing well in Vegas.
Skip plays the part of the devoted family man, but when he sets foot in Sin City, he becomes a different person. A person that his family wouldn't recognise.
Skip was leading a double life, and Las Vegas was at the heart of it.
He wasn't there just to earn a living. He had dalliances.
He had multiple women on the side.
He had a credit card that Robin didn't know about, and he was spending money on other women.
Obviously, he didn't want his wife to find out.
And Skip certainly doesn't want his father knowing about his secretive exploits on the road. For the time being, Ernie is distracted by an old wound that still festers.
One of his buddies told Ernie that the school board were going to hold a public hearing to add a new tax.
My father was really upset. He didn't want his tax dollars going to put trees in instead of going toward books and teaching skills. He was really dedicated and passionate about helping teachers and about helping students.
Ernie has a plan that will undermine his old school board enemies. Meanwhile, his son Skip is living a high-rolling gambler's lifestyle with secrets of his own.
He had lots of open accounts and spent lots of money.
He was partying and playing poker and winning, and he had the girls and the money.
Complicating matters, Skip has become completely smitten with one woman in particular, Adrienne Solomon, a fun-loving, successful event planner.
We met at a craps table. I was in Vegas for the first time. He was starting to flirt a little bit, and so my instinct told me to look down at his ring finger and make sure there was nothing there. And there was not a ring, so I felt comfortable going to dinner with him.
Skip got very serious with Adrienne.
I was living in North Carolina, and he was living in California. We tended to meet either where he was playing poker or where I was running events.
They went to football games together, traveled together, and acted like a normal couple.
But Skip somehow never mentions to his new girlfriend that he has a wife and child back in LA.
Adrienne thought she was in an exclusive relationship with this man.
Skip was a good boyfriend. We were having a wonderful life in Vegas. We were always getting the best tables and getting to go to the best restaurants and good seats at the best shows.
Adrienne falls head over heels for Skip, or at least she's fallen in love with the man Skip pretends to be.
She just thought he was the man of her dreams. He professed his love to her on multiple occasions.
We talked about marriage. We talked about having kids together. He even spoke to my parents about taking things to that next level.
It's amazing the mental capacity to keep all of those secrets straight and all of the lies without having crossover.
Another secret. Skip isn't only cheating on his wife, he's cheating at the gambling tables too. And his luck is about to turn.
We would go to casinos and he would play blackjack and count cards because that's the easiest way to win money.
The casinos frown on counting cards.
One of the casinos on Fremont Street thought he might have been counting cards.
He eventually got tossed out,
depriving Skip of his best, most profitable game.
He could no longer play blackjack, so that had to affect him negatively.
It also impacts his financial sponsor.
Skip was starting to lose a lot of money. Tanner started to pull back and not give him the money for bigger tournaments.
Banned from blackjack, Skip doubles down on different games, taking bigger risks, desperate for money.
Skip was willing to lose $10,000 at a craps table on one sunny afternoon. It was so beyond my comprehension.
Skip was under a lot of pressure from my parents to get the money paid back.
The stress is getting to Skip, but he can't give up his lavish lifestyle, and it seems he'll do anything to keep his family in the dark about the hard truth. He's losing.
He was probably afraid that the house of cards was going to fall because he had a lot to lose. He could lose his house, he could lose his marriage, he could lose his father's approval. His ego was too big.
Skip was desperate for cash, and his world was crumbling around him.
Something was going to have to give.
The cards are stacked against Skip Shearer. He's having a run of bad luck and risks losing it all.
Skip had been counting cards at blackjack, and the casinos have a very strict policy against counting cards at the blackjack table. The downfall came really when he started spending more money than he was making.
He was still gambling like he had no debt at all.
In reality, Skip is very much in the red.
He had the $600,000 he owed his parents. He had a debt to his fiscal sponsor. He had a lot at stake.
For now, Ernie remains blissfully unaware of his son's mounting debts. He's focused on his upcoming battle with an old nemesis.
He went to the school board meetings and just berated people, called them corrupt.
Tension escalates and a fierce disagreement erupts.
He actually got into a physical confrontation with one of the board members. It was a kind of a screaming, yelling match.
And Ernie got in his face and poked him in the chest.
To try to make his point and maybe even try to get to turn more physical.
That was a little bit dramatic, but that was Ernie.
Ernie's making more enemies and there's a lot of bad blood. To cool off, he leaves town to join Skip on one of his gambling trips to Vegas.
Finally, Skip told me I was going to get to meet his father. I was so excited. We were at Caesars Casino and Skip said, "Adrian, this is my father." I put my hand out to shake his hand and his father said, "I know who she is." And then he left and Skip said, "So you finally got to meet my father." He didn't even really acknowledge I existed and I was very upset.
That's the beginning of the end.
I was having some serious, difficult thoughts in my head and worrying about our relationship and what was going on.
Someone else is just as unhappy.
Ernie was very disappointed in Skip because he knew that Skip was stepping out on his wife.
With turmoil in his relationship with Adrian and his father deeply upset, the setbacks just keep piling up for Skip.
He became further in a hole with Tanner.
Skip owes him thousands of dollars.
Skip wasn't paying it back.
For Tanner, that was a huge loss.
But Skip kept stalling.
Unfortunately for Skip, the guy who pays for his poker chips also knows the guy who paid for his home.
Tanner was well aware that Ernie had money and felt it was important for him to notify Ernie that his son was on a bad streak.
Tanner talked to my dad about a debt that my brother had that he was not paying.
Ernie is mortified. Not only is Skip cheating on his wife, he's not paying his debts.
Skip wasn't real happy with the conversation that Tanner had with Ernie. He took it as more that Tanner was kind of snitching on him and trying to get his family involved so perhaps he could recover his money from Ernie versus Skip.
And my brother was panicked.
He owed his dad the $616,000 and started to fall behind on some of his mortgage payments.
My father was absolutely crushed. This was a big financial burden that they had taken on for my brother.
Skip's money problems are Ernie's money problems.
For Ernie, the timing couldn't be worse. Skip isn't the only one who owes him money. Ernie's poker buddy Stephen can't pay back his condo loan.
Ernie held people accountable. He wasn't going to take it.
The agreement wasn't kept, and so he was set to repossess the condo.
Calling in a loan from an indebted friend is one thing, but for Ernie, dealing with Skip is a family matter.
Ernie and Charlene were not happy. Charlene in particular, because she did not want to loan the money in the first place.
My mother tried to warn my brother about all of the hazards, that gambling is not just an isolated thing. It's a slippery slope of downward decline into a pit of abysmal financial destruction.
Charlene and Ernie called Skip and Robin to ask when they were going to get repaid.
My parents were all up in his business about it.
This was the first that Robin had heard about potential financial trouble. She was very angry.
Skip, a master of persuasion, convinces Robin that everything is fine.
Skip obviously thinks he's just in a small slump and he's just waiting for his recovery to happen.
Robin unfortunately had no idea as far as what money they had in the bank, how he was financing his playing.
Skip was lying to a lot of people. He lied to his parents about his financial situation. He lied to Adrian. He lied to Robin.
Robin was feeling stressed.
Oh, Robin's fears are coming true. Her husband is keeping secrets from her and they can't pay their debts.
Is this the point at which this castle that he built is really a castle made of cards and it's all going to come tumbling down?
That was his own doing because of all the secrets and the lies.
It's trouble in paradise for Skip and Robin. Skip is on a catastrophic losing streak, and Robin knows it could cost them their dream home.
She had started to worry about their financial situation.
Skip had fallen behind on his property taxes, and that would have had them put a lien on his house, which would have complicated things for his father, too.
Robin was constantly hounding him about getting the loan paid off.
It looked like they were going to lose their house.
Feeling the pinch, Skip decides to once again bet on himself.
Unfortunately, when he wasn't doing well, sometimes he would start playing even more.
My brother just always went all in.
Skip told Robin not to worry about it numerous times.
He said he could handle it and he was going back to Vegas.
He was really going to see Adrian.
Skip is torn between two women and he's having a hard time keeping either of them happy.
We were still traveling together and still having fun together. We lived the life of people who were making huge amounts of money, and he had money, but not like that.
When he started spending more money than he had, he stepped across the line.
Skip spends freely to keep his secret girlfriend happy, but Adrian has a new secret of her own.
At that time, I knew that he wasn't the person for me. I knew we were not going to continue our relationship. Skip and I were not going to be together forever. And that was hard for me.
As usual, Skip plays the Iceman. He takes the new reality in his stride, or at least pretends to. The losses may be piling up for Skip, but his dad Ernie is on a winning streak.
My dad is frequently the winner.
So there was a lot of boasting.
My dad one night won $9,000 and came home with that cash in his pocket.
He would flash money around.
And his antagonising continues away from the poker table when Ernie schedules a meeting with the former mayor of San Ramon to share his concerning suspicions about the board.
He was going to tell the mayor that there was malfeasance on the board and the board members were corrupt.
With her husband Ernie picking fights with the school board and her son Skip sliding into financial ruin, Charlene looks forward to a respite from all the doom and gloom, a family vacation.
They were getting ready for a trip.
We were all excited to take this week-long vacation in Hawaii together.
Maybe a relaxing getaway is just what everyone needs. But unfortunately, things are not working out as planned.
The week before we went to Hawaii together, my mom called me while I was working and I couldn't take her call. I tried to call her back, but it went straight to voicemail. During the week that followed, I called her multiple times a day.
She couldn't get a hold of her mother, and that was very unusual because they talked almost daily.
I called my brother and I was like, have you heard from Mom and Dad? What's going on? And he was like, I haven't heard from them, but don't worry about it. It's not important.
She got concerned enough that she called the country club and asked that somebody go and check out the house and see if everything was okay.
An employee heads to the Shearer's home for a wellness check.
They saw the packages outside the door.
Something was very wrong.
When taking a closer look, the country club worker makes a bone-chilling discovery.
They looked in the window and they knew something just absolutely horrible had occurred in there.
It was terrifying.
grisly scene is discovered inside the home of Ernie and Charlene Shearer.
An employee from the country club, when he looked through the window, he saw a body.
A male deceased on the floor. Immediately he called 911.
In 2008, I was running the Pleasanton Weekly. I walked into the office at about 8 o'clock, and my editor said, "There's been a murder." It was shocking.
When police arrive, they make another horrific discovery.
It was a double murder.
The victims were Ernie Shearer and his wife Charlene. I worked homicide for approximately 10 years. The Shearer case was one of the most gruesome crime scenes I've ever seen in my career.
They had been bludgeoned to death, and Charlene's throat had been cut to the point where she was almost decapitated.
On a scale of 1 to 10, this is a 12.
Ernie and Charlene's daughter, Catherine, can't believe they're gone.
When I learned the details of how they were killed, I just couldn't believe it. It's like watching a TV show where you see something and you're like, that's not real. That's fake. That's made for TV. But this wasn't made for TV. These were my parents. The first call that I made was to my brother.
Skip was in complete shock that his parents had been murdered.
There was just silence on the other end of the phone. And then he said, "What do we do now?" We were overwhelmed with complete loss.
The unspeakable, gruesome tragedy sends shockwaves of horror and disbelief through the family, friends, and community in Pleasanton.
2 people were brutally killed in their house. Husband and wife had been married for 31 years.
The brutality was just unbelievable. We believe the homicide occurred between March 7th in the evening and March 8th, somewhere in the after midnight hours.
Based on the decay of the bodies, they decided that my parents had been dead for about a week.
Police quickly get to work, examining the crime scene for any clues about the killer's identity and any potential motive.
The first thought was that it was a robbery. The house was ransacked.
The tile floor had bloody footprints
made by a size 12 shoe.
Alameda detectives learn Ernie had recently won $9,000 at a local casino and was bragging about it to other patrons. Is it possible someone followed him home afterwards to kill him?
That theory went out the window pretty quickly because they found $9,000 in Ernie's pants pocket. None of Charlene's jewelry was missing.
It definitely very quickly appeared to be a staged crime scene.
Police did notice that there was no forced entry.
It was obviously not a burglary gone wrong. This was personal, and it was gruesome.
Detectives want to know if the Shearers had any personal enemies. Catherine reveals that her father certainly did.
I thought of maybe San Ramon Valley School Board District associates that my dad had upset.
Did someone hate Ernie so much they'd take his life?
Ernie had a lot of enemies, particularly in San Ramon.
Detectives find out that Ernie was scheduled to attend a meeting with an influential politician on the 8th of March to talk about Ernie's allegations of corruption on the board, the morning he and Charlene were likely murdered.
The fact that he did not make this meeting, it was very, very possible that one of these board members, specifically the one that he was pointing his fingers at, could have been so angry they would have killed him. That was a very high possibility on our list.
Police interview several board members and soon realise the theory doesn't make sense.
I don't believe the board was corrupt. I don't think there was any evidence of it.
And all those people, they had alibis where they were.
So who did kill the Shearers? Investigators look into some of Ernie's recent business deals to see if anyone had an axe to grind.
Ernie had a financial transaction with one of his buddies that didn't end well.
Stephen Schaefer owed money to Ernie, like $100,000, but he failed to make payments.
He ultimately lost the entire condo. Ernie took it back from him in foreclosure.
Detectives track Stephen down and question him.
We looked at Stephen as a suspect. We felt he was probably angry because he did lose his money, but that turned out not to be the case at all. He had no ill will towards Ernie. we were able to rule him out because he had a very strong alibi.
As police look into Ernie's other financial entanglements, Skip and Catherine lay their parents to rest.
The funeral service was beautiful, and my brother was a pallbearer.
Right after the funeral, he told Robin that he just needed time by himself to grieve.
The police had asked me if I thought he could do it, and my answer was always no.
When we looked further into Skip's alibi, it was almost impossible to pin him down.
His alibi was that he was in Vegas, drove back to Los Angeles. The next morning, he went to play cards with his grandfather, and his grandfather verified that.
But no one can corroborate that Skip was at home in LA the night before when his parents were murdered.
Police did look at Skip's phone records, and it was showing up as on in Vegas, and it showed up later closer to Los Angeles.
Unfortunately, his phone battery died for 18 hours, and we were unable to track him via his cell phone. There was just a lot of missing time that we couldn't account for.
Those crucial hours fall in the time when Skip's parents were murdered.
We try to dig very deep into Skip's life. There's something going on here with him.
He's hiding a secret lifestyle. What else is he hiding?
Police start unraveling Skip's secrets.
He had a huge thirst for other women. His most serious affair was with Adrienne Solomon.
A detective calls Adrienne with questions about her relationship with Skip.
One of his very first questions was, how long was this affair going on? I said, well, that's a very controversial type of word. I said, we were in an exclusive relationship for 2 years before we broke up. And he said, so you don't know he's married? And I was completely floored.
They say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but police want to know if Skip's secret double life could have spiraled out of control and led to his parents' murder.
The amount of secrets, the magnitude of lies is so huge. It's unbelievable. As
Alameda detectives hunt for the killer of Ernie and Charlene Shearer, Skip's secret girlfriend, Adrienne Solomon, is shocked to discover she's been living a life full of lies.
I couldn't believe that I had been in a relationship with someone for 2 years that had such huge secrets, big secrets.
She was quick to let us know that she had no idea that he was married, no idea that he had a son.
Detectives believe Adrienne, but they still need to know her whereabouts at the time of the murder.
She was 2,500 miles away in North Carolina. There was a lot of people that were checked into, and the only suspect that it kept coming back to was Skip.
Investigators get a big break when Castlewood, the country club close to the Shearer residence, hands over security video.
We were able to see a red Camaro go into the neighborhood and then a few hours later leave the neighborhood, and we were able to determine that it was almost exactly the time that we had put the time frame of the murder had occurred.
Skip owned a red Camaro.
The fact that they found footage of a car like his going in and then coming out 4 hours later, he was guilty.
His whole life was crumbling around him. All these lies, they were starting to close in on him at a very, very rapid pace.
Skip's motive becomes crystal clear when police examine Ernie and Charlene's will.
My parents' will stated that once the child turned 30, that they inherited their half of the estate.
But both parents had to be dead.
Their estate was valued at about $4 million.
When the murders occurred in March, Skip was 29 years old. In July, he would have turned 30 and would have been able to get his $2 million.
He did it for money.
Police want to bring Skip in, but he's nowhere to be found.
Robin was saying things like, well, he just left and I don't know.
Skip's wife, when we pointed out a lot of the facts that we had learned so far, realized that He probably had something to do with the homicide.
Angry and upset, Robin agrees to help police.
The police asked her to call Skip and ask him about the red Camaro.
They have a police video with something that looks like your car, and you in it. You can see the face of the driver? Yes, were you there?
Police wanted to get Skip's reaction to that.
Hello? Well, please tell me about the video. I'm here, I'm just thinking. No, I'm not really trying to hide myself. Did they think you're trying to hide?
As they hunt for Skip, police continue to build their case and discover that on the day of the murders, he made a stop which piques their interest.
Our investigation took us to Primm, Nevada because of Skip's credit card receipts.
Investigators know Skip stopped for food and gas, but they suspect he made another stop at a sports store.
Police went to interview employees. One of them did remember someone buying a baseball bat, size 12 shoes, and goalie gloves. The purchase had been made pretty close to the time that Skip would have been purchasing the gas and the fast food.
It was a cash sale, but the clerk actually remembered Skip buying those items.
Authorities suspect Skip used the baseball bat to bludgeon his parents and that he bought those specific shoes to place footprints at the scene.
Skip does not wear a size 12 shoe.
We determined that he literally bought a shoe size 3 sizes bigger than his to throw us off.
After buying the shoes and bat, Skip continued the long drive to his parents' home.
When my brothers showed up on their doorstep, they were probably terribly surprised.
His parents were in bed or getting ready for bed.
The evidence led me to believe that Ernest and Skip were having a conversation. The discussion obviously got out of hand.
And then things went terribly wrong.
I think Skip beat his father to death with a heavy object, most likely a baseball bat. And as this beating was going on, Charlene heard the commotion. Suffered what they call defensive wounds too, where she obviously put up her hands to stop Skip from assaulting her.
I can't imagine the betrayal, the feeling of betrayal that they felt when their son started attacking them.
Ernest's body, obviously, it was bloody. He suffered a severe beating.
Charlene was almost decapitated.
The murder weapon, we believe it was a sword that was kept in the house. Ernest had like a collection of swords that he would get in various countries, and one of them was missing.
This was a horrific, awful, brutal crime. Murder. It was a murder. His secrets and lies literally destroyed his family. He wanted the money, he wanted the house, he wanted the family, he wanted the girlfriends, he wanted the big, fancy gambler's lifestyle in Vegas. And he had to do what he had to do to get that.
The ugly truth is finally laid bare. Skip kept on doubling down until he got so far in the hole that he chose to murder his loving parents for money.
Skip's secrets and deception abandoned me, killed my parents. My brother knew when I called him and he said, "Don't worry about it," when I couldn't reach my parents. He knew that they weren't alive. He knew that I didn't need to worry about it because they were gone. And he just didn't care.
After 11 months on the run, Skip has finally played his last losing hand. He's arrested and charged with his parents' murder.
I want to advise you have the right to remain silent. Do you understand that? Yes.
The entire case was built on Skip's secrets and lies. There's just no other way to put it.
On May the 20th, 2011, Ernest Skip Shearer III is sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences without parole for the murder of his parents.
At the end of the day, everybody has to pay the price for the lies that they tell. And this is his price.
This story is tragic.
It's so devastating to think of how many lives his secrets and lies destroyed.
Most of all, I grieve for my children not knowing these great people. I tell them a lot of stories. They are missing out on such amazing people. They were real people who had real lives and real value. And there was so much loss that was just taken from them so brutally, so cruelly, without thought or care. Sorry. I can only hope that my parents are able to somehow understand how much we miss them and how much we love them.